Proxy Table Gaming fans, PTG. We are back with a very special video for you today. I'm with Lucky Sixes as always, and we have a very special guest. It is Scottish Knight, Ed Murdoch. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
Welcome. Not your first video on the channel, is it? I don't think.
I don't know if I've done any sit-down videos. I've done a few kind of interactions at events, but I'm not sure if we've done any kind of sit-down interviews
You
before.
were one of our first interviews when we literally knew nothing about anyone, and we were like, "Oh, you'll do," and you were like, "Oh yeah, I'm head of background. I do this, and we were like, "Wow, this is a good interview."
Yeah, we picked the right guy.
Yes.
That was Art of War 2, I think, wasn't it?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Back in 2018. Wow, time flies.
But yeah, we're not here to reminisce. As you can see, we are here with the head of background. Still, he loves it that much. He's cracking on, and with a very special Kingdom of Equitaine 9th Age supplement. And this has been released today, so you can find it on probably the news, but also the download section, I imagine, as well. With yourself here. Would you like to introduce the book and say what sort of the feelings around it are?
Yeah, absolutely. So this, I will preface by saying I worked on this and helped on it, but I'm not the lead writer of it. That's sure. Pete Orphanos, who's known as Tacky on the forum. But this is intended to accompany the development of the new Kingdom of Equitaine Legendary Army book. So that'll be a process that happens over time, but this was always part of our sort of changes to the background release process, where as the book is being developed and in advance of anything being released, we wanted to have something that's a bit of a cultural supplement, gives a bit of information about KOE as a faction beyond just what they're going to be on the table, but also what inspires that, what sits behind it, and what sets them apart from all the other factions in the world.
Yeah, man, and this certainly does it. And there's no contents page and stuff, but it's a 28-page booklet, including front and back, I think. So it's got a lot in there, and it's as you can see, it's quite a big team. Matty P is included in there as well from the old
he's paying you to mention him specifically.
Absolutely,
yeah.
To see if you can guess which one it is. I'm sure. We had a little discussion before this. We're sure he's going to cover it. So we'll leave that.
He puts out a podcast like every 3 days, so I'm sure he'll cover most of it at some point.
He might have already done it, to be fair. So. But yeah, so it's quite exciting. It's, as far as I know, the first one kind of its generation, so to speak.
We did the Dread Elves supplement previously. It wasn't quite of this format. It was a kind of experimental, first iteration. This is a little bit closer to how I expect they'll look going forwards. It's a good point about the contents page. I might suggest it for future, just because it might be handy to have that.
Can you have a little suggested by Lucky Sixes at the bottom as well? He'd love that.
Luckily, success. But and it's got there are pieces of art with it as well, which we'll show you in a bit once we've talked about some of the bits that we liked in it. But yeah, there's all sorts of things in it. We're allowed to show 3 pieces, so we will. Because we want you to go and read it, and there is lots to read, and it's very, very good. Lots of different styles as well. For example, first off, and this, as far as I know, this is a first from this point of view, is that we've got people and notable individuals, and looking at probably a little bit outside the normal style of saying about people as well, which was very interesting to us.
Yeah, so this is, I actually wrote this one, which you didn't know.
So we didn't know that.
They don't call me Lucky Sixes for nothing.
Oh, man.
I hope this luck is being utilized on the battlefield appropriately.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't say appropriately.
So this was drawn from the idea of texts like Debrett's, texts that are all about who noble figures are and the kind of high society books that you would find that would talk about them. And so, yeah, we spent a bit of time having a think through some figures from the past, some figures from the present. But I think they're mostly relatively contemporary individuals. And it gave us a chance to flesh out a few of the people who we already knew were part of the faction. Obviously, someone like King Henry has been mentioned in other documents. But then there are also some characters who've been mentioned once or twice, like General Fontaine, and like Lydia Tanya Foray, who've both had mentions, but they haven't necessarily had their sort of story fleshed out at all. And they're not huge texts. They're not going to, they're a paragraph for each. They're not going to give you everything, but they do give a bit of a mixture of figures who are active in the country.
Absolutely.
They definitely whet the appetite. I mean, I just want more and more when I read, like you say, that they are quite concise, and that's great. But I definitely read these and I'm like, no, give me their life story. Tell me what they did last week.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is, we could easily devote a short story to any one of them. And, as much time as we can spend writing on things like this is great. So,
yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we've got that. We've also got we've picked out geography, which is more text-based and along the same style. Getting from someone's perspective, but goes into a lot more detail about what you can expect in that sort of general area. And anything you want to say about the geography piece?
Yeah, I mean, one of our main thoughts here was to introduce the fact that there are different regions within Equitaine. Obviously, this is something that is, it's a big ask from the community. We know that people want to know more about the makeup of the areas. What we don't want to do is we don't want to define everything. We don't want to say, here are the exact political borders of the country and there are 6 dukes and you can only have one of the 6 in your army. But what we do want to do is give individual regions and give an idea of how the country is structured. So there's a bit of sort of patchwork making it up from the areas that are southerly, and this will be a cultural divide that will probably come out more as we write more about Equitaine, that there's a kind of southerly half that's strong in terms of things like horses, open terrain, obviously ties into a big part of Equitaine culture. And then there's the northern half, which is a bit more rugged, more mountainish, will tend to have more of the wilder creatures, and also will tend to have more connection to the kind of magic and myth element of Equitaine. So but then we also break it down beyond that into sort of more specific areas. Trying to think of some of the specifics, like the areas that are known for farming, the areas that are known for being more fishing and naval related, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And that was something I remember reading within the book, was about how magical they are. And there is so within this there is stuff about the Fae and things like that as well, but also how naturally magical some of them are as well, and without going into too specifics, because I know that was quite a nice bit for me to read and find out and stuff, but how attuned they are, just a basic level, but magic is seen to be something much bigger. So I quite like quite like that. With, again, going back to this one with geography, the setting for me, that's one of the best bits of having the background and fluff and having the setting, which I know can be quite hard within the style and stuff that you want to do as well. So I love this bit. I thought it was really good. The last one we picked out was a bit quirky, a bit of a quirky one.
Yeah, a bit different, this one.
That we liked. And again, sort of, this is by no means the extent to the different styles. There are lots of different styles. So there's some poems, for example, things like that in there.
Ballads.
All that stuff within the supplement, and it goes into quite a lot of detail all around. But we picked this one out because we quite like the old.
It made us smile.
Yeah, he's looking at a halfling that's he's
He
been
stumbled
interrogated.
into an interrogation and he doesn't realise it really. Poor old Roger. Yeah.
But
it's it's like
one thing we
an
were talking
inquisitor,
about,
isn't it?
was Inquisitor. Is Inquisitor just a person, or is it an empire of some sort? Inquisitor
Connection.
This is intended to be specifically an Inquisitor of Empire of Sunstar.
Sure.
I wasn't sure. I thought that was clear, but then it may not be. So that's.
To be honest, we were like 90% sure that was the case, but we didn't want to.
I guess we probably thought that using the name Dieter Werner probably.
Absolutely.
And Inquisitor, because that's the first thing I thought. No, is it? Because I was looking at is it actually the thing? But that is the first thing we go to. But it's good that we confirmed it. We all quite like the sort of give and take of the sort of thing through this.
They're basically trying to get him to incriminate the Equitaines, aren't they? And they're struggling, aren't they? But we won't go into too many details. But it's very worth a read.
And he's very innocent, is Roger.
Yeah, I mean,
naive.
We have we've wanted to build on halflings for a while, and this is, I think, maybe the first official publication where we've mentioned them. So there's more to come of halflings when we have the opportunity to do it. We wanted them in there because they're classic fantasy, but they're also they bring a sort of light-hearted and sociable touch to the setting that it can be really handy for something like this, where you want an outside view, but you want someone who's not necessarily driving a particular agenda. They have this kind of wholesome quality that can be quite useful at times.
No, absolutely, and it definitely came out, and it was one of our best pieces anyway. But like I said, it was a shame we could only show 3, if we're deadly honest, because we had several here that we quite liked.
I'll save it for video part 2 then.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, we could have a sort of like, what do we think this really means in the grand context, don't we?
Picking it apart. But for those looking at it going, oh my goodness, it's so much to read, blah blah blah, which was me to start off with, because I don't read anything. But there are
read.
Yeah, this is probably the first book I've read. Can this be classed as a book? I'm not sure. Anyway, but there is also some lovely pictures going around as well with the release of this. One of which is from Marcus24, which is this one, which is very, very nice, very slick. And the next one I'm going to show is from Casp. Which is actually too big for my overlay, so I will try and scroll down. But I thought this was the nicest little picture bit. It goes into a lot of detail, which is sort of signifying.
There's a big emphasis on the heraldry as well within the supplement, isn't there? That is something that very much kind of stays, if we dare say staying.
Yes.
And the colours and things like that, and this artwork definitely brings that out. It's beautiful.
There's actually within the thing again. We won't go into the actual thing, but there's a piece within the supplement booklet about paintings as well, which was like a culture. I think it was under culture or something, which was talking about 2 different artists and different painters as well, portraying different battles and things, which I thought was very good.
Some with a varying level of accuracy, which is kind of amusing.
Which we quite liked as well. But so there's all sorts within the book. Go check it out. It's on the news and everywhere within Ninth Age, and I'm sure lots of other YouTubers and podcasts will be talking about it as well. So there's plenty to do it. But check it out for yourself. Have a good read. Sit down and enjoy it, because it is very good. And so thanks to yourself and the team, Mr. Scottish Knight.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope people enjoy it, and if there are suggestions on what to make sure is covered in future versions, I'm sure one of the issues will be that we haven't covered enough, but we'll continue trying to bring out more material. But we are already working on documents for Vermin Swarm and for Saurian Ancients. So.
Woo! And I think, we've got some questions for you, because while you're here, we're going to milk you for as much as we can.
Absolutely.
I think that is something from like all the fluff people. I think this is a massive positive to have everything about KOE in sort of one little supplement. I know we've got like different books already out, but something like this, which has so many different types of background and styles of doing it, I think is amazing. I think it's really, really cool, and it's really good to cater for lots of people. So we've definitely enjoyed reading it and everything. But shall we do a little interview?
Absolutely.
Yes, while you're here, we'll leave this on because I'll switch between this and Marcus because they're both very nice pieces, but something nice to look at as well. I mean, other than us, right?
Well, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway. We have got Ed here for a reason.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, definitely not.
Brings up the quality of the pieces.
Absolutely. But so I will start. We've just got a few questions about the background in general, really, for anybody that's interested in that. The first one is, what style would you say Ninth Age is writing in general, or is there one style?
I would say there isn't necessarily one style. There's probably we probably tend towards a descriptive style in terms of we use a lot of material. So the one style I will say is that it's immersive in the sense of anything that we publish is presented in a way that means it could be an in-world text. There's no sort of outside world view that is being brought into it. So what is available is something that could exist inside the world in the same way as you would experience history documents or culture documents in our world. They're written by someone. That means they come with the benefits of that. They come with the connection to the subject matter and the fact that this is from a real perspective. They also come with the drawbacks of that, which is that they can be subject to an agenda and they can be incorrect in places. We don't tend to put out things that are outright false because that would not really help us. But you know, if goblins start talking about someone and you know, they're presenting their side of an argument or a, you know, you've got a bit of an idea that that's probably not necessarily entirely the true story.
Sure.
So yeah, within that style,
why not?
We have. Well,
yeah, what are you saying?
Yeah, come on now.
It's...
well, it depends. You know, from a certain point of view, I'm sure the goblins are entirely right.
Yeah, thank you. That's better.
But within that style, we do have the opportunity for lots of different styles, and I think the supplement has probably shown that more than some of our work in the past has. You know, we've had opportunities for poems and narration. We've had opportunities for quite concise information delivered in sort of a very much to the point and summary way, which is something that I know people have asked for. So, you know, I don't think that there's necessarily a restriction. I think we haven't explored the full variety that's available within the in-world setting previously, and we'll continue to try and build on that. You know, there is nothing to stop us doing full-on prose, and I think it has happened a couple of times. I think that's the more challenging area, because while you have examples of that in our own literary history, and there's no, you know, there's no problem with doing something like Beowulf or Gawain and the Green Knight. All of those kind of texts existed in our world. There's no reason they can't exist in Ninth Age, but they're a lot of work to put together in any kind of useful length and to make them work. So we'll you know, working on that kind of thing at the moment. I think as close as we've got is maybe Circling the Abyss, which was a little bit more of a poetic style, but was a direct storytelling.
For sure.
Okay, so next question for you, Ed. Where is the best place to find the stories, the fluff for the Ninth Age world? We know because we are regularly checking it, but for anyone else who doesn't know?
Well, yeah, it's a bit of an issue in terms of there isn't necessarily one best place. Obviously, I would say first and foremost the books that are published are the best places, and obviously with the new supplement publication, we'll continue to add to those, and there'll be a dedicated section, I would imagine, on the downloads page. So that will be somewhere that we'll hopefully push people towards. Beyond our publications, the website team have done a lot of work compiling selections of information from all over the published works, and they've put it onto the Ninth Age website. So when you go, rather than going to the forum, if you go to the main Ninth Age page, there's a drop-down menu with a bunch of individual faction areas, and that will lead you to one of the 16 with a lot of information compiled about, who they are, and anything that's been published that kind of explains anything about them. The idea is obviously that over time we'll build up on that, and so any of the publications that we have will probably be available there, and that will continue to add on. There's also a community wiki, which is maintained, I think, by Madat, and is a very useful tool, again, compiling things that have been published and released. So those are, I would say, the three primary places that I would look if I was looking for any bit of information.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess as well, a lot of the stuff is also if you read it in the scroll.
Yes,
when it's,
of course.
But a lot of it is in the download section and stuff as well. Was this creating of this? Was this like part of that accumulation of fluff?
Yeah, it was part of that. It was part of the fact that we're moving with the books more towards the idea that the full book will come out with the gold release rather than with the alpha or the beta release. Because what we were finding was we were putting something out that then had to be amended, it had to be changed, and so we were potentially putting a lot of extra time and effort into making story articles that were superseded or had to be updated. Artworks were not necessarily going to be in line with what the finished book was. There's always the potential that a whole unit could get changed, for example. So what was there is no longer there. So it made more sense to have that final version, that final book, come out when a book is locked, and we can do it justice then. But that also means then we've got the gap during the time that the book is being built, where you don't necessarily have the information. And then at the same time, the books that were being released, they didn't necessarily have that kind of ground level information of, who's the king, what's the political structure, any of that kind of thing isn't necessarily laid out. So this was our opportunity to say to anyone who was interested, before you get into the army that's being developed and before you get into reading their book that has lots of stories and lots of examples, here's the kind of grounding in the faction, here's the bones of the faction explained and given some detail.
Yeah, great. Which leads us fantastically onto our next one. What are the background team's plans for future rollouts of background info and supplements? Which you've kind of already answered, but is this the plan moving forwards?
So the plan is ideally, not long after an army is announced as being the next army to be developed, we will be working on this supplement, and this will be published as soon as we are able to. So ideally before the alpha comes out, if it's possible, it'll be with the army guidelines, but that may or may not be possible depending on how much of a lead up time we have. But yeah, so this is the plan, is that this will come out for each army. We'll continue to have other things worked on. So at the moment, we're working on the Dread Elf Legendary Army book. So when that goes gold, we'll have the full army book and art and everything to go with it. We're also working on finalizing a background compendium, which is a lighter touch than the faction supplements, but gives more of a world overview. So a short summary taken from which have been published in the scrolls for most of the factions, a short summary of each faction, and then a bit of information about the world at large. And that is, we've now completed the background for all of the 16 factions in terms of the basic structure of them. So now we're turning that into a compendium that can be released.
Great. Well, that's wonderful. In terms of the process and everything, of creating backgrounds and stuff. Obviously, there's you want it to link to the books and the rules. What can you talk us through that sort of process on what sort of timelines you do things, what you do first, etc., etc.
Yeah, I mean, so the first thing, and this is one that has taken a lot of time, was to take each of the 16 factions and to sort of break them down a bit, look at what their inspirations are, what their culture is, what their kind of underpinnings are. That started with warriors a long while back, and that was us looking at, we need to create the identity for warriors. We need to look at what they are. So then we had to look at, what their relationship with the dark gods was, what their relationship to other cultures were, and so from there we built it up in terms of the paths of ascension and how different parts of the army link together. So we've had to do that for each of the factions, and as writers have joined and writers have changed, and as the team has grown over time, we've had a lot of different ideas brought in. People have brought different ideas, aspects, and different skills as well. We've got quite a broad selection of skills within the background team. So all of that coming together in order to describe a faction takes, it can take 6 to 9 months of kind of work and discussion, and dozens and dozens of pages of forum discussions.
Yeah, sure.
Which all gets distilled down into the kind of core background wiki that we have that will give us the really basic bones of what we're going to write about. And then from there we take that and we expand upon that for something like this background supplement, where this is the kind of thing that could be written before the army has its rework, before it's actually turned into a new army, because this is more of the cultural side. It shouldn't tell anyone what any unit should be, what kind of units are in the army. This should just be the kind of behind the army culture that inspires it.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to the lab, that's the opportunity for this culture to be examined from a military perspective. What elements of this culture can be represented? What elements can be brought onto the battlefield? So for KOE, for example, that's an interesting discussion about you've got the military elements, you've got the religious elements, and you've got the Fey elements. And those kind of three things all have to come together in some form. But background what we try to do is not to tell anyone how that should be, but give them the opportunities and give them the fuel to say, well, we could have this type of Fey, that type of Fey, we could have all these different elements are possible, and then look and see what's best for the army in the game.
Which is very apt, because you do go into that in this little ever so slightly, which is very good. Something to look out for. But again, I won't go into it.
Nice one. So if somebody wants to get involved themselves in the background team, is there somewhere that they can go? You mentioned there's quite large teams involved.
Yeah, we will certainly consider any applications, and we are always on the lookout for adding new skills where it's needed, and especially having people that are willing to put the time in, because it does take a lot of effort to bring yourself up to speed with the subject and to continue to contribute week in, week out, and get that momentum, which is really important. So if people want to apply on the Ninth Age website, on the forum, clicking on your profile, your avatar at the top left brings up user groups, I believe, and then you can click on the background team to apply, or you can send me a private message directly on the forum to Scottish Knight, and I will be happy to discuss anyone who wants to contribute.
Great, sounds awesome.
Yeah, brilliant. And
this is your favourite question.
I know.
You've been waiting to ask this all day.
I put this in. I have kind of sort of half-assed it. So, with obviously all this stuff and this lovely artwork and things, are there any more maps or timelines that you're looking to release as the project goes on?
Yeah, timeline is an interesting one. We've actually just discussed making a new timeline for the website. which would be a different sort of presentation of the 9 ages and just giving an overview. I mean, the main issue with maps and timelines is that they require a lot of precise information in order to construct, where the text can be built up gradually over time. Maps are a lot more difficult to do that. We are testing some new software that would allow us to build that up on an internal basis to have a kind of map that can get added to over time. And then we can give that, we can extract from that to give to the artists to make an artistic version of a map that would actually be worth having. So we are exploring that kind of thing. It's also something we are working on for the Legendary Army books. So with Infernal Dwarves, they had a territorial map, and that's something that we will definitely try and make sure is incorporated in any of the future labs, because I think that's it's an important thing to have for a faction's identity and to give some culture or flavor and inspiration for different armies within their, within that army to make up your own stories. It's something that is definitely very much on our mind, but trying to create the information to make an effective map is surprisingly involved. So if there are any cartographers out there who want to volunteer their time,
absolutely. And
Lucky Sixes will just make you a map in 5 minutes. Just give him a pen and a paper. He's away.
I do want to say the main reason it's on the background team's mind is because I'm texting Ed about every 10 minutes about when's the next thing coming out and what about this and all that stuff. So, but yeah, I have actually got one more question that regarding the supplement itself and stuff. Are there potential things that are spoiled for going forward in terms of names for anything, for example? What the biggest example I have is Sainted.
Yes, you mean in terms of unit names?
Perhaps.
It's possible, but none of the names are set for anything yet.
Okay.
Cool. So, what we do with all the names is we have a very broad discussion among the background team with the kind of starting point of what the army development team has put together. And we look at what names make most sense and work with a kind of broad variety of considerations. And then we put them out into the world during the alpha and the beta, and then make any adjustments needed to the names. And as much as nobody gets names right on the first go with everything, so if we can improve upon them, we will definitely do that.
Yeah.
So,
you can't please everyone all the time either, can you?
You definitely can't, and there's a lot of conflicting views on what any one name should be.
Yeah, sure.
I know, for example, with renaming Saurians recently, we've explored in recent communications about how Saurians could be called Gila, and some people absolutely hate it. For me, it's quite an interesting one. The Gila monster is a really cool and interesting reptile, poisonous reptile, and it's an interesting
poison attacks for everyone. I like it.
You've heard it here first.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, when it comes to something like that, there are good reasons why we want to change it, because Saurian is the name of the faction. We don't want to have a species that has the same name as their whole faction, because it muddies the waters there. But equally, trying to find a name that everyone will be happy with is a huge challenge, especially because it sometimes involves moving away from names that people have been used to for a long time.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, for sure. And I say the main reason I asked that is because actually there's quite a lot of not specifics, but like types of knights, for example, that are mentioned in this, types of peasants or men at arms type things,
characters, ranks, and things like that.
Yeah, so there's lots within this supplement. You can take a chill now, Scottish Light. You've done your fantastic.
He's good, isn't he? He's done very well, I have to say.
Well. Put up with us for nearly an hour.
Yeah.
That's nice. But yes, we'll wrap it up there in terms of the supplement itself and talking about that. But a huge thank you for coming on, chatting to us about it. I've just lost the front page. Here we go. from our point of view, good work, and say thanks to the rest of the team and how well they've done. And it's a good, for sure. People watching this at home, go check out the Tales of Chivalry from the Kingdom of Equitaine and download section from Ninth Age. Certainly a good read, and gives you a really, really good insight of what's coming up and what you're playing with.
Yeah. Cheers for that, Ed.
No problem. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and another shout out, if you do want to get involved in any of the background stuff, hit up Scottish Knight, which now means you're going to get about 30 messages in the morning, and I'm not even going to apologise.
They're all going to be from Lucky Sixes about the map.
The map, yeah, really. So, all right, 31 messages. But no, thanks very much for joining us. As always, to everyone, like, share, subscribe, and leave any comments here. We'll be sure to pass them on to Scotch Knight and the background team. Until next time, guys.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Bye.